The docking clamps hissed like a nest of boiling eels as the Glavari vessel, Eminent Palate, latched onto Earth Station Prime's upper pylon. Cameras blinked into life. Broadcast drones zipped into position. A carpet violet, not red, in deference to Glavari visual sensitivities unfurled in crisp photogenic waves. Diplomats from 6 systems waited in full regalia, trying not to wilt under the station's inconsistent climate control. And at the far end of the promenade stood a massive hollow banner, flickering just slightly. Welcome to the 54th Interstellar Gastronomic Expo. Varnick Thole disembarked with the pomp of a solar flare. Every inch of his iridescent robes shimmered with culinary rank. His scent glands, finely tuned to emit subtle notes of citrus and superiority, activated immediately. Ah, he sniffed, nostrils flaring. Industrial detergent and burnt caffeine. How quaint. A translator drone chirped apologetically. He means, how charming. Varnick swept down the promenade, ignoring the outstretched hands and warm smiles of his human hosts. He paused only once beside a stall, offering Earth's traditional mini donuts, squinted at the powdered sugar, and muttered something about glucose, a salt. Then he reached the press zone. Ambassador Thole, a reporter from Venus Colony News, leaned forward. As this year's culinary arbiter, what are your expectations for the Terran delegation? My expectations, Varnick said, his voice laced with honey and scorn, are calibrated for disappointment. Terran cuisine, in my experience, is a tragic byproduct of evolutionary missteps, marinated in poor judgment and garnished with delusion. If one must flavor protein with chemical aggression just to make it edible, one should reconsider cooking altogether. The clip went galactic in under 7 minutes. 2 levels below the promenade, buried inside a storage kitchen hastily converted into a temporary base for Earth's team, Maya Chen held a cleaver in one hand and a vacuum-sealed tray of emergency ration algae in the other. She watched the clip on her cracked tablet, lips pressed thin. He said, "What now?" asked Michael Reeds, the Earth team's logistics officer, poking his head through the curtain. "We already had a reputation for over-salting. This isn't gonna help." Maya didn't answer. She set the tray down, turned off the tablet, and went back to chopping dried shallots with methodical precision. They didn't know yet that things were about to get worse. By mid-morning the next day, the assigned Earth delegate, Chef Helena Briggs, had been medically grounded. Acute gastric distress. Likely viral. Definitely contagious. Possibly traced back to an experimental mollusk mousse consumed during transit from Europa. Helena was now in quarantine with IV fluids, rehydration salts, and a steadily growing panic over missing the competition. Earth's culinary representation was due in 16 hours. "We need someone," Michael said, pacing in tight circles around the comms terminal. "Anyone with certifications. Food safety, prep level 2 or higher. Anyone who can cook, legally." "I'm not certified for expos," Maya said flatly. "You're all we have. You did emergency relief on Titan's outposts. You kept people fed during the droughts on Mars Dome 7. That counts." "I cook in tents," Maya muttered, "with powdered soy protein and a cracked rice cooker. Not whatever this is." "This is survival," Michael said, "and if we back out, Terran cuisine becomes the galactic punchline for the next decade." Maya looked at the dry stores, ration bars, pressure-sealed protein bricks, a crate of questionable seaweed labeled Pacific Substitute Kelp, Grade C, and one dented pressure cooker with U.S. Navy stenciled on the side. She sighed. "Fine. But I'm not doing fusion, no foams, no deconstructed nonsense. I'm doing comfort food, real food." Michael hesitated. "How spicy is this real food?" "Spicy enough," Maya said, "to make them remember." 3 hours later, she stood in a borrowed prep bay, squinting at a catalog of alien ingredients that might have once been vegetables. She poked a suspicious purple tuber with the tip of a spoon. It hissed. "Nope." Behind her, a prep bot beeped for attention. The protein replicator was jammed, again. Maya cursed, then manually overrode the safety lock and pried out the synthetic stingray cutlet she'd been trying to print. At least it looked vaguely edible. She worked in silence, layering kelp rice soaked in rehydrated broth and fermented aromatics. The stingray browned on the outside, slightly underdone inside, was seared over a chemical heating coil and then doused in sambal, a fire-red paste she had made from dried chili powder, garlic, vinegar, and sheer stubbornness. Her hands stung from the peppers. The prep bay smelled like warning signs and bold decisions. When the station's filtration kicked in to scrub the air, someone in the adjacent bay started coughing uncontrollably. Maya didn't look up. By the time she finished plating, her fingers were blistered from 2 minor oil splatters, her left ankle had cramped from standing too long, and her backup rice timer had shorted out mid-boil. But the sambal was ready. The kelp rice steamed gently in its tray, and the stingray glistened like a dare. The judging chamber was a semicircle amphitheater with 5 alien judges seated on elevated plinths. Zol Vaughn, the Sauron apex representative, loomed like a bioweapon left out in the sun. Covered in heat-venting scale plates, his frame made the seat creak when he settled into it. The Sauron digestive system could metabolize molten rock, sulfuric compounds, and was rumored to have once broken down neutronium pudding. Varnick Thole sat to his left, arms crossed, already bracing for disappointment. Dishes were presented one by one. Trays floated up to each judge, whispers, murmurs, polite applause. Then came Maya's tray. Zolvan picked up his utensil with surgical caution. The scent of the sambal hit him first, an atmospheric uppercut of chili and fermented acid that made 2 other judges lean away instinctively. He took a bite. He froze. Steam rose from the gaps in his scales. His claws spasmed. His pupils contracted into hard slits. A low growl rumbled from his throat, a sound halfway between agony and awakening. He slammed the tray down. The chamber fell silent. Then, without a word, Zol Vaughn reached out and scooped a second helping. One of the judges whispered, "Is he shaking?" "No," Varnick muttered. "He's salivating." Zol Vaughn let out a thundering breath. "It is a glorious war, between pleasure and pain." He coughed, flame hissed between his teeth. Then he took another bite. Varnick stared at the plate, stunned. Then, skeptical, performative, he lifted a forkful to his mouth. There was a pause. A blink. A muffled squeak. Then Varnick toppled backward off his plinth with a thud, limbs twitching. Medical staff rushed in with gel packs and rehydration tubes. An IV line was prepped. Varnick's eyes bulged as the sambal continued its fiery conquest of his taste buds and belief systems. Maya, watching from the prep chamber's viewing window, said nothing. But Michael whispered, "Holy hell, you just broke the culinary arbiter." Varnick Thole regained consciousness 12 minutes later, eyes fluttering open under a cool compress soaked in mint gel. His mouth still burned. His dignity, less easily treated, was scorched beyond recognition. Medical staff scanned him for neurological damage, allergic reactions, and at his insistence, psychological trauma. But the diagnosis was simple: extreme capsaicin exposure, compounded by pride-induced hypertension. The verdict: no permanent damage, except perhaps to his ego. "Drink," the Sauron judge growled, shoving a hydration pack toward him. "You'll live." Varnick took the pouch with trembling fingers and sipped, glaring sideways at Sholvan, who had settled back into his seat with the posture of a reptilian Buddha steam, still gently rising from his scales. "I feel as if I've been throttled by a sentient volcano," Varnick croaked. "That was the rice," Solvan replied. "The rice?" The fish was battle, the rice was surrender, perfect balance. Varnick groaned. The remaining judges, who had only dared to sniff the dish, now watched from a cautious distance. One brave Ornithi delegate dipped the very edge of her tasting tool into the sambal, dabbed it on a sensor pad, and recoiled when the chemical index registered a hazard level just shy of corrosive. "This cannot be considered food," Varnick snapped, still lying down. "It's culinary brinksmanship, Terran masochism, disguised as hospitality." And yet, 3 feet away, the serving tray was empty. Every shred of stingray and rice had been devoured. Maya stood just beyond the chamber's access door, arms crossed, eyes low. She was exhausted, aching feet, grease-spattered sleeves, a tension headache pushing against her temples like a stuck pressure valve. Michael was beside her, bouncing nervously on the balls of his feet. "I think you did it," he whispered. You may have just traumatized the most powerful culinary official in the Glavari Union. That's not what I was going for, Maya muttered. The next few hours passed in a frenzy of unexpected attention. Footage of Zolvan's glorious war speech had already gone viral. 1,000 memes bloomed across the local intranet. Number Sambal Strike, number Maya the Mouth Melter, number Terran Thermal Cuisine. One image of Varnick mid-faint was artfully edited into a historical fresco, complete with laurel wreaths and weeping cherubs. By the time the judges reconvened to deliberate, Maya had fielded 12 interview requests, 3 marriage proposals, 2 from reptilian species, and 1 urgent message from the Earth Culinary Alliance asking if she had any cooling variants for more sensitive palates. She ignored all of it. Her back hurt. She was running on 2 nutrition bars and a cup of vending machine coffee. Her hands still smelled faintly of vinegar and garlic, and she wasn't even sure she wanted the recognition. It wasn't supposed to be a statement. It was just food. Real food. That night, back in the makeshift Earth kitchen, Maya sat on a steel stool, staring at her own reflection in a dented mixing bowl. She barely registered the sound of the door sliding open. "Your battle dish," came a low voice, "was magnificent." Zolvan ducked through the entrance, folding himself into the cramped kitchen with practiced ease. He held a data scroll under one arm. His scales gleamed with fresh oil. 2 med patches clung to his side. "You're still feeling the heat?" Maya asked. "I now sweat from pores I did not know I possessed. I have also developed a recurring dream in which the stingray chases me down a volcano while laughing in chilly dialect." "That sounds like a concussion." "It is a gift," he said solemnly. Maya blinked. Zolvan extended the scroll. "I request the recipe, the original, not adapted for interstellar publication." The dish. As it was meant to be endured. Maya hesitated. "Why?" "I must attempt to make it myself. To understand, to survive it again. This is not a dish, it is a trial, and I wish to emerge victorious." She gave a short laugh. Not mean-spirited, just disbelieving. "You're serious." "I am Sauron. Our rituals include magma wrestling and acid diving. You have created something that rivals both. You have my respect." He tapped a claw on the countertop. "But first, you must teach me how to not set off the fire alarms." Elsewhere on the station, Varnick Thole sat in a private meditation chamber, breathing through a sterilized spice filter. His pride was bruised. His palate, however, had been awakened. He'd spent the last hour reviewing Earth's culinary history, an odd mess of improvisation, cultural collisions, and suspicious ingredients. None of it made sense. There was no logic to it. No harmony. And yet, Varnick rose, adjusted his robes, and activated his holopad. A moment later, Maya's comm beeped in her pocket. "Miss Chen," Varnick's message began, his voice crisp. "I find myself unable to stop thinking about your dish. This may be a medical concern. Regardless, I must request the full recipe, and regrettably offer my public retraction." There was a pause. "If this is war," he added dryly, "I concede." By the following morning, the announcement was official. Maya Chen, Earth's substitute chef and reluctant culinary gladiator, had earned a special commendation from the Interstellar Gastronomic Guild. Her dish, listed as Sambal thermal protein with fermented marine base, was declared culturally significant, nutritionally challenging, and spiritually transformative. A flood of requests followed. The Qatari Culinary Institute offered her a research fellowship. The Tel Ar Gastronomic Council wanted to license her sambal paste as a sensory exploration supplement. Even the Glavari Union's own prestigious school, the one Varnick chaired, invited her to teach a workshop on Terran culinary psychology. She said no to most of them. "I'm not a chef," she told reporters later that week. "I'm a cook. I fed people during mudslides, reactor floods, food shortages. You get 4 ingredients and a busted camp stove. That's my resume." "But now," one journalist pressed, "you're a galactic name." Maya shrugged. "Sure. Just don't forget to bring antacids if you try my cooking." Maya Chen awoke with a sore neck, a cold cup of coffee glued to her hand by sticky condensation, and a blinking hollow notification flashing deadline, 5 hours in angry red letters. The Interstellar Culinary Archive had requested formal documentation of her recipe, a historically significant reproduction, complete with ingredient profiles, preparation methodology, and, inexplicably, flavor vectors. She hadn't slept. Not really. Not with the constant stream of messages, alerts, and congratulatory pings from every corner of the station's network. Earth's press labeled her the Spice Sentinel. A Martian columnist compared her sambal stingray to a solar flare you can chew. Her mother, bless her, left a simple voice message that consisted entirely of proud, sobbing, and then a stern reminder to wear proper kitchen shoes. But now came the part Maya dreaded writing it all down. It wasn't that she couldn't, she knew every step, every measurement. The problem was how she'd done it. Half the prep had been pure gut instinct, the kind you only get when cooking for 30 people in a flood shelter with 2 working burners and a sack of rice clumped with humidity. She hadn't followed a plan. She'd followed memory. And now, the galaxy wanted that memory preserved. She stared at the blinking cursor on the datapad, then sighed. "All right," she muttered, flexing her aching fingers. "Let's teach these aliens what desperation tastes like." Meanwhile, in the Glavari Union's diplomatic suite, Varnick Thole paced with the anxious precision of a man attempting to appear calm, while privately reliving the sensation of his esophagus boiling. His assistant, a young Glavari culinary scholar named Pellick, observed him from a safe distance, clipboard in hand, emergency water sprayer within reach. "Ambassador, the symposium begins in 1 hour. Are you still planning to—" "Yes," Varnick snapped. "I will speak. I must." Pellick blinked. "About the Terran dish?" "I spoke in arrogance, Pellick," he said, straightening his robes. "But worse, I failed to recognize genius in its rawest, most terrifying form." He held up a small vial of sambal Maya had gifted him. "This is not seasoning. It is rebellion. It is every unsanctioned flavor philosophy I dismissed as culinary heresy. And it humbled me." "You fainted." "I transcended," Varnick corrected, sniffing the vial. Then he winced and quickly recapped it. "Momentarily. But I will reclaim my dignity. Publicly." Pellick looked skeptical. "Should I prep the gel packs?" "Yes, but discreetly." The symposium stage was minimalist by interstellar standards, a transparent dais hovering above a sea of delegates, journalists, and culinary students from 14 different systems. The Glavari panel had originally intended to headline the day with a lecture on refinement in complexity. Instead, Varnick Thole stepped into the spotlight and cleared his throat. "I owe a correction," he began, voice calm. "2 days ago, I described Terran cuisine as a tragic mistake, a gustatory accident marinated in poor judgment." Polite murmurs, the occasional nod. "I was wrong." Now, silence. I was unprepared, not just for the heat, but for what it represented. Terran cuisine is not crude, it is unyielding. It is history, memory, and hardship emulsified in fire. He paused. It terrified me. But I would eat it again, and again, because anything that makes me feel this much deserves respect. A long beat. Then applause, polite at first, then slowly building as a dozen hands clapped, then 100, then the whole auditorium thundered with appreciation. From the wings, Maya watched, arms crossed. She had no desire to be on stage, but she gave Varnick a tiny nod when he glanced her way. He returned it with a small bow. Later that day, Maya found herself cornered in the station marketplace by a desperate-looking vendor, waving a glowing contract and shouting, "Just brand the sauce, we'll handle the distribution." Another offered her an entire orbital restaurant. Someone else wanted to put her face on spice packets. Michael tried to intercept them. "She's not interested. She's going back to what was it? Flood kitchens?" "I'm going back to people who need the food," Maya said, "not ones who treat it like interstellar roulette." Michael sighed. "But you could build an empire with this stuff." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Do I look like someone who wants an empire?" He conceded the point. She handed him the finalized recipe documentation. "Send this off. Tell the archive they better not mess with the ratios." Michael peeked at the notes. "You named it?" She shrugged. "Thought it deserved one." The title read, Field stingray with sambal vengeance, a comfort dish for adverse conditions. He whistled. Subtle. Elsewhere in the station's training kitchens, a very large, very determined Sauran diplomat hovered over a portable cooktop with a chef's hat that absolutely did not fit his skull. Add the shallots, Maya instructed, arms crossed behind him. They hiss at me. They're supposed to. Zolvan glared at the sizzling pan, then gingerly tipped the shallots in. They crackled. A nearby translator drone whirred as the room's temperature rose slightly from sheer ambient anxiety. You're sweating again, Maya noted. It is fear. And anticipation. Good. He chopped with surprising delicacy, claws clicking against the board. I never imagined food could challenge my combat instincts. That's because you never ate in a Malaysian grandmother's kitchen during holidays, Maya said. Those women trained with fire. He chuckled, a low rumble, like an engine turning over. I wish to return home with this skill. I will serve it to the grand nest. You sure that's wise? If they perish, it will be an honorable death. Maya rubbed her forehead. Just don't skip the rice-soak time. I'm not putting that on my conscience. As the final day of the expo dawned, Earth Station Prime hummed with unexpected pride. Human cuisine, once the galactic joke, was suddenly a fascination. Classes in controlled capsaicin deployment were scheduled. Alien cooks asked about fermentation, about umami, about the mysterious power of comfort food in disaster zones. Maya answered some of them. But mostly, she cleaned her station, packed her knives, and returned the dented pressure cooker to the station supply locker, leaving a post-it note that read, "Thanks, it survived the war." When she boarded the shuttle back to Mars Relief HQ, she carried only a small pouch of dried sambal mix, 3 handwritten recipe cards, and a polite but firm note declining the Glavari teaching position. The seat beside her was empty. Until Jolvan ducked in, holding a sealed container. I saved you some, he said. I replicated the dish, twice. Maya opened it, sniffed, blinked. You added cinnamon? It was an artistic risk. All right, she said, settling in. But if my tongue burns off, you're filling in on rice duty. Agreed. And together, they shared a quiet, combustible meal, one last glorious war of spice and memory, before the stars turned beneath them again. Earth Station Prime's culinary wing was quieter now. The festival banners had been taken down, most of the delegates were already in transit home, and the lingering smell of unfamiliar spices had finally faded from the air vents. Maintenance bots moved silently through the halls, scrubbing away traces of spilled broth and singed garnish. For the first time in a week, the station's ambient temperature sensors weren't fighting against open-flame cooking setups. Maya Chen sat alone in the Earth kitchen compartment, cleaning the last of her knives with practiced, tired movements. She should have been long gone. The shuttle to Mars Surface Aid had departed 3 hours ago, but she'd given up her spot when she learned that the Soran diplomatic vessel had room for one more, and a detour planned past the Ceres orbital corridor. Truth be told, she wasn't ready to go back yet. Not out of fear, but because, for the first time in a long while, she had something she wasn't rushing away from. Varnick Thole found her there, seated on a cargo crate with a cooling gel pack balanced across her neck. He walked in without his usual entourage, dressed down in a simpler robe, the colors less iridescent than usual. A sign of humility. Or exhaustion. She didn't move, just glanced at him, expression unreadable. Ambassador, she said evenly. Maya. There was a pause between them, filled only by the quiet hum of the station's power core through the walls. I've reviewed your documentation, Varnick said, holding up a data tablet. It's unorthodox. Your measurements are wildly inconsistent. Your preparation times vary by intuition rather than temperature thresholds. There's even a section labeled taste, until it makes you question life choices. She didn't respond. He hesitated, then added, It may be the most honest culinary record I've ever read. That made her glance up. I was taught to see cuisine as a system of mastery, he continued. Technique, hierarchy, balance. But your dish, it wasn't a system, it was a defiance. Against precision, against expectation, against comfort. Maya gave a dry laugh. It was a meal, made with scavenged protein and spite. And it tasted like history, he said, lowering himself onto a crate across from her. Real history, not the kind curated in sterile kitchens, but the kind born of desperation, love, and too little time. I have tasted hundreds of dishes. Yours is the only one that felt like survival. She looked away. Did you come here to recruit me again? No, I came to say thank you. That brought silence again, deeper this time. Not uncomfortable, just full. I'm not a warrior, Varnick said. But you fed one, and he wept tears of fire and joy. You healed something in me too, though I can't name it. Ulcers, maybe, she muttered. He chuckled. It was light. Real. Then he stood. I'm leaving for the Union Core Worlds tonight. I've arranged for your recipe to be enshrined in the Union Culinary Vault. I've annotated it myself. No edits, no simplifications. I didn't ask for that. You didn't need to. He turned at the door. When you cook again, wherever it is, remember this. What you create might not be refined, but it reshapes people. That's the point. And then he was gone. Zolvan returned to the training kitchen 2 hours later, carrying 2 large boxes of alien produce, most of it glowing faintly. I'm told this one, he said, lifting a melon-sized fruit that emitted a low hum, can be used for sweet or savory applications, depending on how insalted it is. Maya stared. You brought me ingredients that have feelings? I brought you a challenge, he said, setting the box down. The Sauran diplomat had spent the last 48 hours dragging her into taste tests and ingredient trials that felt more like battle simulations. He'd singed off the edge of his taste sensors twice. They'd broken 2 pans. And 1 station-wide alert had been triggered when a spice blend activated a radiation sensor by accident. But every attempt was made with complete reverence. No showmanship. No arrogance. Just a shared love of heat and risk. She liked that. As they prepped in tandem, she chopping, he delicately measuring out trace oils with claws, built for bone crushing, they slipped into a rhythm. One she hadn't had with anyone since her relief days on Titan. Why do this? She asked suddenly. Zolvan paused. Because I have eaten food engineered to impress, and I have eaten yours. She tilted her head. And? Yours reminded me I was alive. He plated the trial dish with unexpected grace. A stir-fry of unknown root vegetables over fried grains, laced with a sambal variation that Maya hadn't taught him, but he had somehow intuited. She tasted it. Her eyes widened. It was wrong, but brilliant. The heat didn't hit first, the sweetness did, followed by a slow, rising burn, like a story told backwards, ending in a note that tasted unmistakably of home, even though nothing in the dish was from Earth. She coughed once, then took another bite. Zolvan waited, stiff with anticipation. It's not mine, she said, voice hoarse. No, it is ours. The Sauran shuttle left Earth Station Prime under quiet escort. Maya stood at the rear viewport, watching the stars tilt. Her kit was secured, her apron was folded, and her hands for once weren't blistered from overwork. She hadn't accepted a school position. She hadn't signed a brand deal. She hadn't written a book. But in the shuttle's kitchen module were 15 recipes waiting to be tested across Sauran. Diplomatic posts adapted, survived, remembered. They called it Project Resilience. A name she hadn't chosen, but one she didn't mind. Zolvan was already trying to adapt Rendang next. She warned him it would involve patience. I have waited through 7 hibernation cycles, he said. Maya just handed him the spice list. The final communication she received from Varnick Thol arrived weeks later. It was brief. I have prepared your dish in orbit over Glavari Prime. My pupils wept. One required a medic. I consider it a triumph. You remain a menace. Fondly, burst T. She smiled. The galaxy hadn't changed. But now it paused a little longer before mocking Terran food. It respected it. Feared it, maybe. But more than anything, it remembered it.